Hello and welcome to Live Mindfully with Laurie Moore. Over the next few weeks, I will be taking you on a deeper dive into the 4 key areas that will help you become your most mindful self. This week, we are looking at the number 1 way to becoming more mindful through limiting distractions. Let's dive in. Hello. It is freezing here today. My hands are so cold that it was extremely difficult typing out the script for this week's podcast, but here we are and it's done. So all I need to do now is limit distractions so that I can talk into a microphone to you. So way back in the beginning when I recorded the very first episode of Live Mindfully, I spoke about 4 ways to increasing mindfulness. And as a refresher, they were limit distractions, reflect, be organized, and set realistic expectations. And over the next few weeks, I want to record an individual podcast that really gets into the guts of what I am talking about for each one. So this week, I want to talk about what exactly limiting distractions is and how we can do it. And I really want to break this down for you because as a mum, as a daughter, as a wife, as a sister, as a friend, as a person who has a job, I know that you, like me, are really wearing a lot of hats. And, limiting distractions, it really isn't as simple as just turning your phone to silent. And I get that. And I get that because it isn't that simple for me either. And way back in that very first episode, I say that mindfulness is hard because we are always being distracted. And in that episode, I give the example that as I was preparing for that episode, I was interrupted 4 times by my kids. I received 7 emails and I received Instagram notifications and the internet dropped out. It never happens, but the internet dropped out. And it's like Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, especially when we are trying to do something that is the exact opposite of what we are receiving. And this is when our attention at least feels like it is being pulled in 40 different directions. Just now I've received a text, I've got a missed call, I've got 3 emails that have come through, one of which is really important and I need to attend to that today. We are constantly being distracted, and if we don't get on top of that and work out ways to better manage it, we are never going to feel like we are living mindfully from the heart, which is 100% where living mindfully needs to come from. If we can't feel that mindfulness coming straight from our heart center, we are going to be in another perpetual state of wanting something we feel like we just can't get our hands on. And I am sick to death of living from that place. I don't want to live from a place of needing and wanting things to be different from what they are before I can find peace. I want to find my peace, my center, my happiness in amongst the joy of living this beautiful, busy, and full life. But my life, it has to feel authentic and real and appropriate for me, my values, and my goals. So I limit distractions, and it's hard. But our phones, which can be the ultimate distractor, also have all of the settings to help alleviate that problem. So me personally, I have Facebook and Instagram set to turn off when I have viewed it for an hour a day. And you might want more or less of that depending on what you are using it for. But I have set up all of my screen time limitations so that my phone tells me, hey, you've reached your limit for the day. I've also set up all of my do not disturb settings. So I have one for sleep, not that that one really matters because my phone goes on airplane mode. But if I am not sleeping at home, then I have one for sleep. And on that setting, only my husband can call through. When I have my phone set in work mode, it's only my kids' school. When I have my phone set in do not disturb mode, it's my mum and my dad, my husband and my kids' school again. So I have set up the functions on my phone to make it easier for me to not be distracted. And I take regular breaks during each day, and I use that regular break to check my phone so that my mind remains focused on the task at hand and not on wanting to check my phone. So every hour I refill my water, I check my phone, and then I might sit in the sun for 5 minutes or so. And I try not to get caught up in scrolling in the social media apps, but sometimes it happens, and that's okay too. You know, what I can say is that I can promise you that nothing that important is going to happen in an hour on TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram, or WhatsApp. Nothing is going to happen that's going to require you to have access to those apps 24/7. So if you mute them, it's not going to impact your day. But it is really important to understand that these apps are designed to suck us in and to keep us in the app. You know, the designers of these apps, they want us online shopping. They want us watching reels and videos and liking people's stuff, which is fine in moderation, except that a lot of us are doing this mindlessly. We're not even aware of how much time we spend in these apps, and we're not doing it in moderation. And that's when it leads to problems, because we know that excessive use leads to decreases in our mental and physical well-being. There are plenty of studies that show us this. And there are studies that show that on average, we spend 3 hours a day in these apps. And for the most part, we are passive scrolling. We're not interacting, we're not building relationships, we're not being productive. But here's the thing. While our phone is definitely one area we all probably need to put under the microscope a little, there is another really big distraction in our lives, and that's people. We all have people in our life who are probably given more of our attention than they need or deserve. We all have people in our lives who, you know, they kind of always seem to have a little bit of a drama going on. And, you know, we ourselves have also probably been that person from time to time too. I certainly know I have. And for the most part, I like to err on gracious assumptions and assume that most people do not know that they are distracting other people in their lives. I don't think we do this on purpose, but we have become so used to having access to each other that we kind of don't even consider how disrupting that is. We just think something happened, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call my friend. We don't think about what they might be doing in that moment and whether or not now is the most appropriate time for them. We just go, oh, well, it's appropriate for me, and that's good enough. And a long while back, I read a book called One Moment, Please. It's Time to Pay Attention by Martina Sheehan and Susan Pierce. And it analyzes our attention and its misuse. And one of the key components of the book is a focus around people, how we distract others and how we allow others to distract us. But we are in charge of our attention. We are in charge of how often we become distracted. And I've really started to take this to heart because I know that when we are distracted, it takes us 20 minutes to regain our focus on the task we were doing. 20 minutes to refocus. And most of us are likely to be distracted again within that 20 minutes. So it's entirely plausible that we are being distracted continuously throughout our day without ever really gaining any focus on the thing that we're currently doing. So it's really important that we put in place ways to manage this, because that is not healthy for our mental well-being. And it could be tough. If you work in an office and you can't be distracted for the next hour, see if you can book a room in so that you can get some uninterrupted time. Another trick, put headphones in. Even if they're not playing anything, it just sends a visual signal to those around you that you are unavailable. If you'd like to be a little bit more upfront, put a sign on your office door saying unavailable until 12 p.m. Say that you're in a meeting. Say that you're doing something that can't be interrupted. You're working on a project. Or the other alternative is that when people come to interrupt you or call you and you want to answer their phone call, and I do this all the time, simply stop them. Say to them, hey, I really want to hear what you have to say, but I'm in the middle of something. Can I come and see you in an hour? Can we have lunch together today? Can I call you back? And I'm also working really hard. It's just like a little personal goal that I have at the moment, to limiting conversations and meetings to 30 minutes. And where we need to speak for longer, or where we need the meeting to go for longer, if I don't have the availability, I will reschedule, or I will say to that person, listen, I've got to go. I've got other things that I need to get done today. Can I call you same time next week? Now, that's not always going to work, and I understand that. But a lot of the time, 30 minutes is more than enough to get done what needs to be done. And our time is precious. And I feel like many of us feel like we have so much to do and so little time to do it in. And if you're a parent, I would ask you to consider how much time you are actually completely present and undistracted with the little people in your life, because they are the most important people in your life, and they tend to be the easiest to ignore. And I say that from a place of personal experience. So I'm not judging, I've done it. It is easy to distract them with the TV or with a toy or with a snack or with a phone. And I'm talking about teenagers here too. All of the parenting books say that the one thing our children really need and want from us is our presence. And if they have that, there are less problems. So just take a moment to be really honest with yourself about how easy it is for others to distract you away from the things that are really important in your life. And only you can do that. The last two things I want to touch on is things like our possessions and our minds. So it's no real surprise. The more things we own, the more things we have to care for and clean and manage. And this is a huge distraction and a really big energy vampire. So make time each year or every season to go through and throw out what you are no longer using or needing. You know, you could sell things on Marketplace and earn some dollars back. But more so than that, even before that step, look at your purchase before you make it. And just take a second to decide if it is something you really need or something you really want. We are always buying things to solve a problem. I used to work in marketing, so I 100% know how this works. But if we put a little bit of extra thought into that purchase before we made it, we may actually find that there is a solution that doesn't require us to own more stuff, that then needs more of our attention. And I'm now in a habit of throwing things out as I go throughout my day. So, you know, I have 2 small children, which means my house is devastatingly dirty and messy every single day. So I am constantly cleaning every single day. Like, I can't leave that to the end of the week. I have to do it every single day, because if I leave it to the end of the week, it would be way too much for me to deal with. So every day as I'm tidying up, I'm throwing things out that aren't being used, or I'm looking for things that may need to be upgraded. Are things broken, or are there things that we've outgrown as a family? And then those things are either making their way into the bin, into the recycling, into a donation pile, or I'm photographing them and putting them on Marketplace to sell. And I do that as I go so that it isn't such a big job at the end of every season. And the last thing that I want to talk about is our minds. So often we get caught up in thoughts that not only distract us, they cause us suffering. They pull us out of the present moment and back into the past, or they have us worrying about something in the future. And the truth is, the past is the past. We can't change it. It's over. And every time we go back there and it causes us suffering, it's like we're now doing it to ourselves. Whatever happened in the past that is causing our suffering in the present, we are now inflicting the pain from the past into our present. No one else is doing that. We're doing that to ourselves. And when you can really get your head around that concept, it can be life-changing. Because if you're reminiscing about something from the past and it was painful, you are the person who is in charge of whether or not you have to relive that again and again. And when we worry about the future, we tend to worry about the things that we have no control over. You know, the future is in the future. It hasn't come to pass yet. So all we can do is plan as best we can, and then what will be, will be. So if you need to worry about the future, think about what you have got control over and manage that part. And then practice breathing through what you don't, and reminding yourself, what will be, will be. I don't have control over that, so I'm not going to waste time worrying about it. And I also have some really great podcasts that dive into this a little bit more, including the second podcast that I ever recorded, because this is a big one for me as well. And the second podcast that I ever recorded was titled Your Mind is Powerful and So Are You. And it's a really great podcast at providing some tools and some ideas around how we can really take back our mind. Sometimes our mind can feel like it runs off without us. And the other one that I've recorded that really focuses on managing our mind is how to reset your mind after an argument. And while that podcast specifically, or that episode specifically, talks to resetting your mind after you've had an argument, there are some really great tips in there on just how to reset your mind. All right, so let's go back over the 4 key areas to improve, to limit our distractions. Number 1, phone and social media use. And you know what? For good measure, let's throw in TV time too. So take some time tonight, if you've got some time tonight or sometime this week, to review your social media and phone use. So in your phone, you can go to your settings and search screen time, and there is a little section in there that is recording the time that you spend in each of your apps. It'll also give you an overview of your total time, but I wouldn't really rely on that so much, because you may have spent an hour with, say, Maps open, or an hour listening to a podcast, or an hour listening to music. Maybe you spent 4 hours listening to music, but that's all you really used your phone for. So that's not really like a true indicator of the time you've spent on your phone. That's just a time you were using your phone to aid you in getting somewhere, or enjoying, time with friends with music playing in the background. What you want to see is exactly which apps are stealing your attention, which apps are distracting you. And then those are the apps that you want to set limits on. And just remember, you can override those limits. So it'll come up and, on my phone, it says, you've reached your limit today on this particular app. Would you like to spend one more minute, 15 more minutes, or would you like to basically override the time limit entirely and just have the app open for use? But it just helps us have a little bit more consciousness around how much time we are spending in each of those apps when you are given a notification to say your time is up. The second is people. First and foremost, remembering that we too are probably distracting those around us. So first and foremost, becoming more mindful of the role that you play in distracting other people and maybe modifying some of that behavior, or becoming more conscious of that when you call someone saying, have you got 5 minutes for us to have a quick chat? I wanted to tell you something, or I'm just calling to have a chat. Is now a good time? I do that with every person I speak to. Always saying, is now a good time for you to chat? Am I interrupting you? Because when I become more conscious of the fact that I could be interrupting other people, I have found other people tend to be more conscious of the fact that they may be interrupting me. And then we always want to show kindness and graciousness as we begin to shift away from patterns that allow others to distract us. Because if we have been like a bit of an open slather and everyone can call us and we always answer our phone, there's going to be an adjustment period there, and we need to be mindful of that, and we need to be kind and gracious about that, because we're changing something. And maybe even we let certain people know, I've realized I do get distracted a lot throughout the day and I'm not really achieving all the things I want to achieve, so I'm not going to answer my phone between 9 and 2, for example. And you let people like that in your life know. That way you're kind of setting up expectations. And in particular for this one, really just if you are a parent, paying attention to how present you are in the relationships with your children. And if you're not a parent, you have extremely important relationships in your life too. If you are a parent, you have other important relationships. So just as a overall, how present are you in those really important relationships? Are you distracted at the dinner table when you are talking to your beloved or to your kids or to your best friend? Are you on your phone? Are you really listening? Are you deep listening? Are you practicing deep listening from last week? The really extremely important relationships in your life, they're the ones you want to be present for, because those are the people who are really going to miss us when we are not there. And the third is things. How much do you have? How much do you need? Paying more attention to what you are buying and whether or not you actually really need it. And if you're not using it and it is no longer serving a purpose in your life, get rid of it. Don't have it cluttering up your home. And lastly, our mind. Our mind can be a huge distraction for us. And if you are finding that you spend a lot of time living in the past or worrying about the future, then I really recommend listening to my episode titled Your Mind is Powerful and So Are You. Sometimes just even becoming aware that we are doing that can create a powerful shift away from that behavior. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope this episode has provided some food for thought. I'll catch you again next week. Until then, take good care of yourself.